in the early years of business, I would say they're probably the hardest. But contextually for me, they were the ones where I was pretty alone and really had no skills whatsoever. So I guess what's the biggest problem? There's a great phrase that I like, which is if you were to line up all your problems, which one of them that if solved would solve the rest or lesser the rest? And actually the answer for me was...
This is the We Built This Business podcast. I'm your host, Daniel O'Sullivan. This is the podcast for UK business owners to share their journey, their knowledge, their sacrifices, and their successes. This podcast is sponsored by Team Building Experiences. If you're planning a team building event, away day, or corporate event, then check out team-building-experiences.co.uk and state podcast 15 in the comments to receive 15% off your proposal. Hello and welcome back to the We Built This Business podcast. Today I'm pleased to have Matt Turner on the podcast talking about Clownfish Events. Clownfish Events are a London-based event management and technical production team and have recently celebrated 15 years in business. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hi.
So Matt, we'll start with, can you give our listeners a brief overview of what Clownfish Events does?
Yes, we are Clownfish Events, traded for 15 years, and our journey has changed quite a bit, and actually I think what we've delivered has changed quite a bit. But now, 15 years later, in 2024, I would call ourselves an event management company. That phrase is very broad, and this is a big industry, and there's lots of different facets inside of that. But I would say we specialize in technical AV production, so sounds and lighting and staging, but also entertainment. So giant scale electrics or Wells Larder's Pac-Man or photo booth, fun things for events. They're the two things that we stock in-house. And in event management, we often end up hiring bits in.
Fantastic. So what kind of size business are you? How many staff do you have and what's the turnover look like?
There are 15 of us full-time. It's about 10 part-time. I think the full-time equivalent is about 20 or so. This year, we will hit somewhere between 2 and 3 million. We've grown quite a bit. Our first year in 2009, I think I was 18. We turned over £26,000. So there are graphs all around our building actually, but it has done this, which is kind and actually quite exciting.
Excellent. Oh, so when you turned 18, what inspired you to start your business?
It's fun looking back in hindsight. I think my dad, I watched him run businesses growing up. I was quite a shy and slightly nervous teenager. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I wasn't particularly academic. I wasn't very sporty, and I certainly wasn't very cool. And so my options felt, in my head at the time, slightly limited. But the one thing that I enjoyed was I used to sort of DJ or disco kind of setup, sound and lighting. So that's the one thing I think I was good at, and it was a hobby. Quite nerdy at the time. But my dad, he never owned a business, but until the end actually. But he was always the kind of MD or general manager of things like printing companies. Randomly, that's where he ended up and got into. I think I occasionally on a Saturday I'd go into Bastley with him and look around the office, and it was a 100-person company, and I remember thinking, wow, this is cool. Like everyone knew his name, and he felt quite respected in the room. And I remember thinking, if I could combine the one thing, my one hobby, the one thing I was quite good at, but somehow have that kind of status, that would be life complete. And that was my 16, 17, 18-year-old self. A friend and I, we set up a little business when we were 16. It was called M&J Stage Productions. The tagline was making the world a louder and brighter place. And that was, small PA systems for local fetes or church halls. The occasional 50th birthday party with me on my kind of iPod DJ shuffle thing. And then I think school finished. And I was doing that clearly during the sixth form. School finished, and I thought, let's try this for a year, Mum and Dad. Can I have a gap year where I try to start a business? And here we are, a decade and a half later.
Fantastic. So that was actually Clownfish Events. Was it called Clownfish Events at the time?
So it was M&J Stage Productions. Matt, and the J was Johnny. Johnny went to Cambridge University and studied maths. So that was a massive kind of sucker punch at the time. He decided to go off and become more educated. And I thought, and that's not for me. And there's something in here albeit minimal amount. But there's something here. And so on the 1st of April 2009, we incorporated, without Johnny, Clownfish Events.
Fantastic. So you're completely out of school, essentially, launched the business. What's the hardest challenge going forward after that once you started?
My earliest work memory is being 19 years old, sitting in my bedroom at mum and dad's house. All my friends were either at university or doing, unbelievable gap years. I was one of the very few in my year that didn't. And I just remember sitting at my desk, thinking the phone is not ringing. How on earth do you get this phone to ring? No one's emailing in. We had a very average website because I was slightly techie, so I could build that. But that was pretty lonely. And like everyone else was having fun. And I'm just sitting here thinking, and I remember watching episodes of 24, that TV show at the time, just at like 2:00 in the afternoon. And all that does at the time is make you more sad because clearly this is not going to work. But I didn't really know how to do it or what to do. So there are so many challenges. I mean, arguably every challenge in the early years of business, I would say they're probably the hardest. But contextually for me, they were the ones where I was pretty alone and really had no skills whatsoever. So I guess what's the biggest problem? There's a great phrase that I like, which is if you were to line up all your problems, which one of them that if solved would solve the rest or lesser the rest? And actually the answer for me was actually getting and keeping customers. But I didn't have to do that. so that was definitely the biggest and hardest part of the start.
So what was your core product then when you first launched? Was it the DJing or was it the party element?
We got some investment when we first started. I sold some shares in return for £20,000 right on day one, actually. And that investment bought a van, some insurance, and a couple of products. So a bit of kind of PA speakers, how so many of us are. But also it bought a couple of what I would call entertainment products. So I think it bought a rodeo bull and some inflatables and bouncy castles. Not something we do anymore, but it's definitely how we begun. Because I kind of recognized that we were doing these, village fetes, these kind of church hall garden party type things, and they would always want a couple of speakers and some music. They'd also always want some kind of Clownfish machine or bouncy castle or rodeo bull, rocking bronco they call them as well. So that was the core product. It was a bit confused at the start. It was kind of entertainment, inflatables, PA, and we actually called ourselves event management then as well, even though I'm not sure we had any real understanding. I say we, it was just me really, of how to do that. But it was definitely confused at the start.
Yeah. I mean, when you're on your own, it's very hard as well, isn't it? Because you're doing every element. You're marketing, you're doing the finance, you're delivering the product as well. What was the point when you got to your kind of first hire and you thought, I'm going to make a go of this and I'm actually going to bring someone in to help me?
It was quite organic. I was fortunate. My best friend then, and actually amazingly now to this day also, is called Alistair. He was 16, and those were the days you were allowed to drop out of school. And he'd been kind of part-time helping a bit in the M&J days. And he came on instead of doing kind of college or sixth form. And that was my first employee, but we couldn't really pay him. And so it was more kind of friendship and something for him to do. In the end, he was awarded a bunch of shares that helped to kind of compensate that. But amazingly and wonderfully, he's still here. And he's become very much my kind of right-hand man, number two, whatever you want to call it. And the truth is, I don't think this business would look anything like it does today without him. But that first jump wasn't as enormously scary as it could have been because it wasn't done on commercial viable terms for him or the business. So I was kind of fortunate there.
So I mean, it's very handy to have someone that's going to be able to come in and take the load a little bit and also, like you said, not have a financial burden initially. And that's how a lot of businesses start. I mean, I brought my mum in to help with the finance. So I contacted a friend and, we got them on board to just do some freelance work and, similar kind of setup. In the beginning, you have to do what you can do to try and grow the business. One of the challenges you faced is identifying exactly what you do and having a kind of strategy behind it. So obviously in the early days, you said you had bouncy castles, rodeo bulls, PA systems. How have you progressed from there into where you are today?
We changed our minds quite a lot. Again, if you were to graph the kind of output of the business or how it looked to the outside world, it's really all over the place. A year ago, we had about 4 different sub brands: Clownfish Entertainment, Clownfish Events, Clownfish Audiovisual. I think it went on and on and on. And we were trying to create different kind of websites and brands for what we thought were different audiences or different customer avatars. That's all been scrapped actually this year, and we've ended up with just the one brand. It was full circle stuff where we begun 15 years ago. Yeah, it has been confusing, and I think I said at the top of this, the event industry is broad, and there's so much to it. Were we an event hire business or were we an event management business? And if we were an event hire business, then a lot of our customers were actually event managers. So if we say that we do event managers, are we actually kind of competing with who our actually great agency-style clients are? One of the great phrases that I love, I think from Marcus Sheridan, is if you confuse, you lose. And I think ultimately all these different sub-brands and different kind of messaging, we just confused our clients. And ultimately, and you get this from our conversations previously, when you confuse and you put too much out there, the world is very saturated with messaging and marketing right now, more than ever, and that will not change. And so I think ultimately we probably lost, and people kind of gave up and just didn't really know who we were and what our identity was. So in the last, it's been quite a big project, but in the last 12 months, we've just come back to saying Clownfish Events is an event management company. We can create, design, build, whatever you'd like. We have specialities, and we have a couple of cool things in-house that we believe actually every good event needs, which is some level of AV and production, and some level of entertainment and fun. And that's very congruent with who we are as a brand, fun, excitement. And we do that by delivering games and, I mentioned earlier, VR and world's largest Pac-Man and so on.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's an ever-changing industry as well. So, like you said, you can't pigeonhole yourself in one specific area because that area might not be busy the following year, and obviously we've had challenging times over the last 5 years with COVID and everything to have adapt to that. But when it comes to obviously the events industry is very up and down. You've got Christmas, you've got summer spikes. How do you mitigate the kind of loss-making months? Is there a formula that you come to adapt?
That is one of the things that I think I spent 5 years working on, which is, how do you get your massive peak months, which for us will always be May, June, July, November, December. And then you get your kind of months down here, which is kind of January, February, August, October. And actually that isn't great for business. When we own a couple of buildings here, and when banks look at us, they kind of want it to look more like that, more steady. But also that isn't very good for team morale. You get absolutely exhausted here, and then you have no energy here because there's not much to do. And so it's not great for a variety of reasons. And so what we're trying to do is do this. And that is hard. And a part of me wants to say, well, there is clearly a natural incline, so therefore take it, low-hanging fruit kind of stuff. But actually we've spent more attention for the kind of longevity and sustainability of our business, trying to get the lower months out. And actually, I'm trying to, that phrase I've said a few times now, that the industry is broad, I'm using that to my advantage. We historically don't really get involved in weddings, but actually when the corporate work is really, really quiet, August, for example, that's when the wedding season really kicks off. So we're trying to be a bit more intelligent about using the kind of broad industry to our advantage and find work. In August is another good month, things like shopping centers and activations or product launches or whatever in those kind of places. So we've actually gone out and hunted for the first time for work in those lower months. It does actually make the whole business run a bit more smoothly, create this kind of steady flow. It will never, ever be flat. I recognize that, and I've learned to be okay with that. But if I can just slightly just reduce this, then that makes a huge difference to our business.
Yeah, 100%. We, at the start of every year, we kind of map out and look at the previous year, and we kind of put on a graph. We put like January was here, February was here, March was there, and we look at the months that we were loss making and identify what markets could we potentially serve in that time. Because when you suddenly have a team of people that are used to, like you say, going out, working 60-hour weeks, and suddenly you're like, right, we've got nothing for you really to do that you normally do. So we've got to create work for you in that time frame. So that also, like you said, saps morale, and people want to be out, having fun on these events and creating an amazing experience for clients.
The other big thing we do is we do budget for it. So the business takes on enough work in particularly November and December that actually pay for January, February, and March. And I've become a bit more okay with that now. And so January, February, March is just it's a bit like spring cleaning in your house. It's the time that every part of the business gets a bit of a makeover and a bit of love. And the things that didn't quite go right or that needed to be fixed in the peak month of Christmas can now finally be sorted. And so that does work for us. A lot of our team take a lot of holiday in January, February. This year, 12 of us went skiing for a week. We hit our target just in 23, and that was the reward or the prize. And actually, what a great time to go skiing. The whole company closed for a week, which never happens really. We had one person answering phones here, but we weren't really taking much work on. And that is, I try to use these things to my advantage where I can, but at the same time, I recognize it would still create a better business if we were slightly flat.
Yeah, I mean, the ski trip, I've seen your video online. If anyone's listening and goes onto Clownfish Events YouTube channel, you have to check it out. But the incentive side of things, so how do you motivate the team? Is it an incentive for the whole company? And then if you hit that target that they all go, or is it done at a kind of departmental level?
We set pretty ambitious targets. It's kind of a fun part of a growing business. Targets that literally terrify me, and I think there's no way we can do this. But then slowly, me and some of the senior team used to start to break down the end point and okay, well, what would have to happen in order for that target to be met? And how could that look? Who do we need to hire? What skills do we not have? Actually, how much sales do we need to be generating in January, in June? And once that's broken down, we're really transparent. Every single full-timer in the team knows pretty much everything about the business. You asked about how do you motivate. For me, the answer has always been context, as in show them context, be open. It's not just me doing this, it's all of us doing this. I don't like the idea, I own 80% of the business. I don't particularly love the idea that if the business does really well, that's fantastic for me. This kind of shareholder extreme valuation thing, I don't love. I'd rather share that. And so the whole company went to Whitney in Oxfordshire, not a million miles from you.
Up the road.
In August time, hired a big house, and we do it every year. It's called CAC, Clownfish Annual Conference. It's 3 days, and it's probably the highlight of my year, both personally and professionally. And we sit down and we lay it out. This is what needs to happen. And if we do this collectively, and actually everyone has a part to play in this, then here's a reward. And it's all expense ski trip, then in a exclusive chalet with ski out, and it was pretty amazing. And we literally, and it was so unbelievably close to the wire, which kind of made it more fun, I suppose, like a film. But we within about 0.5% met the kind of 5 measures that we were looking to achieve, and I genuinely think it's a team effort. The highlight of CAC for me was our youngest guy, Alex. He is, I think, 21, and he said his job is to deliver. So he delivers events, and he put his hand up for a question and said, "How can I directly contribute towards what are a lot of kind of numerical or financial targets? How can I be involved?" I said, "Stop. That's the best question of the whole weekend. This is amazing." And actually, one of the things I think we try to preach is that everyone is in sales. We're all on LinkedIn. We all go to events. We all go to networking things. We just did a couple of exhibitions and trade shows this year. We're out and about people. Actually, it is your job, if a conversation comes up, to get a phone number, get an email address, talk about the brand. And everyone's involved. And we actually tried to track and measure that, which we did. And everyone was targeted to write 1 post on LinkedIn every month, from junior to senior. Everyone was targeted to go out and make 2 or 3 connections each month on events or in their own lives. We drew up this big kind of super juicer thing, and the concept was, we need to keep feeding in the super juicer for juice to come out the other end, and the juice being the leads or the sales. And here are the things that we need to feed the juicer. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There are more as well. But that's how I've tried to get everyone involved.
I absolutely love that. I mean, it's the epitome of one team, one dream, isn't it? You're all working towards that end goal. You've identified it. You shared it with everyone. And sharing is probably one of the most important things that you can do with the team, because, like you said, otherwise you get that perception of that the company needs to do well for me to do well.
We're obsessed with data. Interestingly, I'm actually not. That's not really my brain. But I have a lot of people here that are kind of the new generation, the kind of 22 to 26-year-olds, the kind of postgraduate degrees who are obsessed with tracking, measuring data. It's that phrase, what gets measured gets improved. And so we have screens like all over the business. It looks like Wall Street upstairs. It's unbelievable. We've just installed this 4-meter video wall, and it is saying everything from the weekly sales, the monthly sales, where we were this time last year. Every single month is laid out on that screen. How many bookings we've taken in this month, what sales have been signed. Every time a contract gets signed digitally, all the screens in the building do a little clap, applause thing, and it comes up with the salesperson. They've won, well done, congratulations, and the value. A couple of my kind of acquaintances or friends have come in and said, oh, do you really want to show that stuff to everyone? Because the problem with showing numbers is they start doing their own maths, and they might start to think, well, hold on a second, maths making, and all this sort of stuff. And I think my response is, well, to be honest, if they were thinking like that, that's kind of good. That's kind of entrepreneurial. That's one of our values here. But actually, if I'm really open and honest about everything, then I think we'll all move together better towards our ultimate goal than actually hiding things. People will do their own maths either way, whether I hide it or not. And so, every full-timer here has, I hope, the privilege of knowing I'm everything about the business. And for me, it's been one of the biggest things that's made the biggest difference. I speak a bit on, I worry sometimes that companies in this kind of modern era are really set up to maximize shareholder value at the expense of human or employee flourishment. Everything is really about the bottom line and ultimately shareholder value. But again, at the expense of the draining of the team. And profit has become this kind of uncool word now. It's kind of dirty, and maybe the big old companies haven't helped with that, or perhaps some of the big tax dodgers in the world. And I kind of try to say, well, actually, profit is really important, because with that, it's really the only measure or only way we can actually build and grow sustainably this business, which keeps our jobs safer, but it also allows us to hire more people and bring more people into this fold. So that is important, but I believe we can do that at the same time as creating a beautiful business that allows people to reach their potential. I love the idea that someone that comes into this door for the first time, into our building and into our business, by the time they leave, eventually, whenever that is, they have become the best version of themselves in a work sense. And I try to practice what I preach. A lot of businesses say these days it's very modern to say, the line I hear parroted is, our staff are our greatest asset. To which I always want to say, well, just give me one way that proves that. Give me one way in which you demonstrate that in your actual actions. And if you surveyed that team more often than not, that's not how they feel. And so, things like taking everyone skiing. We all went to the theatre last Friday afternoon. We do so much social fun stuff. Things like the annual retreat we do every year. I think we're a really generous employer. All of that is trying to put my money where my mouth is and give the best to people, but at the same time is also being commercial. I think you can do both. I don't think it needs to be either or anymore. It's difficult, but it's my kind of mission, I suppose, at the moment, to work out a way we can do both things well.
It sounds really, really good, the way you've implemented it and the philosophy. And it's all, like you said, it's all based around commercial results as well. Like you said, profit is required to reinvest in the business. It's not just so that it can be taken out and used by the owners or the shareholders as, pocket money or whatever else they want to spend it on. It needs to be made so that businesses can become stronger and grow bigger and reinvest in the next version of themselves.
I did a talk last month to the team, and it was 10 reasons as to why profit can be a great thing. And maybe it came across a bit defensively, but one of my points was, in the last 12 months, this business generated and paid His Majesty's Revenue and Customs £420,000 in VAT, in PAYE contribution, in corporation tax, and a few other taxes as well, indirectly and directly. That's a lot of money. And actually, whatever you think of the government, that's a great thing. I think we are literally paying for, this business is paying indirectly for school teachers or building hospitals or firefighters and so on. And actually, that's one of my 10 reasons as to why actually generating profit is a great thing. Actually, the team gets on board with that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think it's also reflected, the morale and the way that the staff are motivated in the fact that you've got all 5-star reviews on all of your review platforms. In today's modern world of very angry customers when one thing goes wrong, how do you make sure that all of the events that you deliver are of such quality every time?
Do you know what? Some part of me, and this sounds bizarre, part of me wishes we did have a 4-star review, because I think it could look as if like we faked it. Now, these are 2 independent platforms. It's Google and it's reviews.io, I think, Trustpilot. And we have no control over that, clearly. They're independently verified. And anyone can leave a review right now. And yeah, as you say, it's extraordinary that in the 6 or 7 years we've been running these review sites, both of them have only picked up 5-star reviews. And it's something we talk about a lot. It's something we track. I think it's on all the screens around the building. That in itself, I think, encouraged us to maintain that standard and not let it slip. Honestly, the kind of humble brag maybe is that I think we're very good at this. I think we're experienced at this. We do things really differently. We would never deliver an event without a full timer on it, at least running it, and that helps. I've talked a bit about those full timers are well trained, but also, I'd like to think, invested into the business, and that makes a difference. We employ a full-time operations guy that maintains and looks after equipment well. I think we hire right. I think people believe in what we're trying to do. The world is quite sad these days. Look at it through a certain lens, and fundamentally, if you boil everything down, we're just delivering fun. Like, we're delivering celebratory, happy moments. Last month we did the Modern Law Awards, 1,000 lawyers or so in London, I think, celebrating great moments, successes in the past year. At the weekend, we did a gigantic 21st birthday party, celebrating 21 years of life. We did a lot of kind of corporate conference, celebrating business success, anniversaries, product launches. Fundamentally, what we're doing is joyful. It's great.
Yeah.
We are, in my humble opinion, we are adding to the world, not taking away. And so, if you want to work here, you kind of got to want to do that. You kind of got to want to be part of the mission and part of the service environment that facilitates and allows people to just stop what they're doing for a few hours and celebrate and enjoy. For me, that's wholesome. That's why I'm still here after all this time. And I believe that the people here want to do that. And actually, to follow on from that, that's why I don't want to be hypocritical. If we do that for our clients, it's unbelievably important to me that we do it for ourselves as well. Like, we're really good. It's one of our culture points. We have to celebrate wins, big or small, in this business. It's why when someone makes a sale, every screen in the building starts clapping. It's why we, for everyone's birthday here, we all go out for dinner or for lunch, and we go around and say lovely things about that person. Birthday is, buy them all present. It's there are so many things that we try to do to make sure that how we want to treat the world and how we see the world is actually is the same as what we're doing internally too.
Running a business is stressful, and when things are going well, it's still stressful. When things are going bad, it's still stressful. How do you tend to deal with kind of the mental pressures of running a large business that kind of looks after, a number of people and lots of clients? Is there any tips or anything like that you use to manage that?
I don't run away from it anymore. I think I probably try to avoid or not think about or put to the back of my mind potential flarings up of stress, anxiety, fear, imposter syndrome. I now try to deal with these things head on. I think I'm incredibly different as a 34-year-old now to where I started. My life is entirely changed. My routine has changed. The way I treat my mind is much more healthy, I think. A good example, this morning, I got on my Peloton bike and cycled 15 kilometers to the Earth, Wind and Fire soundtrack. And I then went for coffee and read the news. and then I came to work and did this. And that's actually sets me up to have a much better day. If we did this 5 years ago, this would have been in the middle of 7 meetings. I would have run in, my mind would have been all over the place, and I probably would have given a poor interview as a result. And so I think I'm way more conscientious about health, physical and mental. I surround myself with, I feel really fortunate. I seem like I feel like I have lots of friends, particularly in the industry. Just before we start recording, I mentioned I'm going out for dinner tonight with the owner of Yarhire, which is, I think, arguably the biggest furniture and equipment rental company in the country, with 100 staff and multi-million-pound business. And that's a new friendship for me, and I'm really excited. I can't wait. That stuff is great. There are not that many people in the world that understand what it is like to run an events business. And so befriending people who perhaps I used to think were competition, but actually recognizing there's so much similarity, that stuff I love. I'm doing a lot more of that. The big one for me is I am buying in my faults, which is something I never did in the early days. I had this mindset that thought, if you're not good at finance, you need to be good at finance, Matt, to run a business. That's the voice in my head. If you're not good at marketing, Matt, as a managing director of a business, you've got to be good at marketing. If you're not good at spreadsheets, and it goes on and on and on, and instead of forcing myself to do this stuff and it being painful and ultimately not very good, now I hire people in. I buy in my faults. We, alongside the full-time team, we have now 3 kind of consultants, 2 in business development and 1 in finance, and that is a game changer for me. And it's proper money. It's expensive, but my goodness, actually, it does make a difference. And as a result, I'm no longer struggling in the things that I wasn't so good at. I'm hiring or buying them in. It's made a massive difference.
Sounds like you've got it nailed down, very broad range of ways of coping as well. And I loved the last statement, with regards to, I usually ask a question is, what would you, what piece of advice would you give yourself when you first started today?
Okay.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, which is you've identified areas that aren't your strong point, and you brought in that talent, and that enables you to be strong in the area that you are strong in.
There's a phrase of I'm full of quotes and anecdotes, but there's a phrase that flies around the internet at the moment, which is the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And I think I love that. The magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And as all the human race, in one form or another, we are looking for some sense of magic, and that's subjective. That's individual. But for me, the magic I was looking for was to create a less stressful business, a more profitable business, and ultimately a more joyous business to run. And there's a lot of things I put off in that first 5 to 10 years, for all kinds of internal barriers and reasons, and cost fears, and perhaps an anxiety of hiring people better than me, that kind of thing. And slowly I've smashed down all of those barriers, and I've done the things that I knew I needed to do, the work. And hey presto, more magic is around this place these days. Yeah, the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding, is something I haven't
heard that phrase, but I love it. I enjoy it. Enjoy it because it does make sense. The amount of times that you avoid doing something because you're nervous. It's something you haven't tackled before, or you got a bit of anxiety about it. Then when you do it, I think you enjoy it so much more.
Yeah. And
you usually do a much better job because you've been a little bit apprehensive about doing it in the first place.
Most of our success here there has been, the timeline of it would be there is some kind of pain point, getting out of the comfy chair, something like that before something amazing happens. That's probably true in nearly all aspects of the successes of this business. There's been some pain first. And I'm learning to be much more comfortable in that pain and to slightly reframe it as this is what it takes for us to get from A to B. And B is worth the pain. So let's just remember that and go through it, and eventually we'll get to the destination.
Yeah. So, talking of pain, if we go to the COVID era, obviously, in a live events business like yourself, economy shuts down, you're not allowed to get people together. How did Clownfish survive that period?
Furlough was helpful for all 2 to 3 months. Sybil's loans, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme, was helpful. 0% interest for a whole year. We borrowed a lot. We lost a lot. I wasn't satisfied with being at home. I did my PE with Joe Wicks each morning, and I went for my hour-long walks or whatever. And after a few weeks, I thought, my goodness me, this is boring. It made me think. I'm not sure I could do retirement very well. I'm a pretty upbeat and active person, and I want to be doing things. I want to be using my mind. I don't want to sit at home for a long period of time. So, amazingly, this building I'm standing in now, we bought 6 or 7 years ago, and we have it's tremendously high. I think 11 or 12 meters high to the east, and we always wanted to put more floors in. It's so tall that we can actually get a ground first, second, and third in. And we never knew how or when to do that because the business interruption would be great, clearly. So COVID was an amazing opportunity to do that work because clearly nothing was going in or out the building. And so in, I think, June 2020, we contracted a mezzanine company, and that began the gigantic building project. And part of that was building a whole new floor that had never existed before and building a TV studio. And it was one of the best and most exciting things, to be honest, we've ever done, but also probably the most ballsy. We, over the back end of 2020 and 2021, it saved the business. Everyone was on Zoom that time, and our sales argument was, look, we're all a bit zoomed out, and Zoom has now become for kind of family quizzes, or Zoom has become for kind of quick, catch-ups with your mates and your mum or whatever you can't live with or you can't see. But for business purposes, if you really are trying to hold your kind of conference or some sort of award show or even your kind of Christmas party in December 2020, just doing it on Zoom, there are probably better ways to do that and better ways to communicate. So we created the studio and we sold this. It was very much sort of Ant and Deck Saturday Night Takeaway. It was like a bespoke and exclusive television show for an hour and a half, directly broadcast to your employees only. And it was just the most fun I've ever had. I mean, it was intense as anything, but like tremendously fun. And we had live musicians, and in those days we could, kind of social distancing reasons, we were allowed to bring in 4 external people to streams. So what happened was these ginormous companies would bring in their 4 most senior CEO, C-suite type personalities. We would spend a morning with them kind of rehearsing the show. And then in the afternoon, they would sort of take part in the show. So using some of the equipment that we already had, we had this kind of reindeer rollerball type game. And we would get the kind of 4 senior people of this company to kind of play that game. We'd film it with live with 3-4 cameras. And the colleagues at home were kind of guessing which boss was going to win. In the waiting rooms, we had live music and colleagues at home could suggest what song they wanted. It was like a human jukebox. And so you'd get the piano player saying, all right, we're going to start in 10 minutes, but while waiting, Karen from the accounts department, she's requested Elton John, so let's give that a whirl. It was amazing. And that carried on to 2021. We hit the jackpot with a celebrity agent, and we had a whole bunch of famous people upstairs, like Vernon Kay, the England football team and the Chelsea football team, because they train not far from here. Pat Sharp, you remember him? And there's actually quite a few more. It saved the business, got us into a lot of debt at the time. Wonderfully, that's been paid back. And now we have this whole kind of new creative filming studio department that, whilst is not nearly as busy as it used to be in the 21 era, we're actually repurposing and using for different purposes. And so, yeah, that's a nice story because that actually worked out. And if I'm really honest, there was a time where I thought, oh my goodness, this isn't. And I remember the studio hadn't been finished yet. And Boris sort of indicated on one of his press conferences that we should be out of the pandemic soon. And I remember thinking, oh no, we've spent all this money, we've built all this kind of live broadcast, live streaming kind of facility upstairs, and now it's not even going to be needed. And then I was going to say, thankfully, that isn't the right word. And then the pandemic did continue on, and it worked well for us in 2021 also.
What an achievement to, out of, like you said, everything's been shut down, to be able to recreate, and that's now part of, Clownfish Events going forward. So what are you repurposing that area into at the moment?
We've hired 3 people since then who've worked full-time in creating video content, social media content, and kind of web content. And a lot of that happens and is filmed in the studio. So team videos, product videos, client testimonial videos. So it's mainly used for internal purposes. And actually, we're kind of closing down the external sell of it because it's too disruptive to our business. But yeah, it's a question we ask quite a lot when we brainstorm is, what would the best in the world do? You know, if the best in the world were sitting around one day thinking about how could you create an incredible events business, what would they say? And I have a few answers to that, but one of my answers is you'd probably have some kind of creative studio space where you could film kind of market-leading videos of new concepts, new ideas, new products, podcasts, interviews. You know, that's probably what the best in the world would do. And so we kept it. And it does really well for us internally. And our brand is growing and our content is great. And we're now on TikTok. We joined that a bit late. A lot of that stuff is filmed in our space upstairs.
Amazing. I imagine that you're able to repurpose it in the future as well as, you know, something that you can rent out to other companies if you decide to go that area, because content is growing. Obviously, with the age of AI and written content kind of declining, video is going to become more and more important. What's your impact on the events industry with AI at the moment? Have you had any changes as a result of it?
It's interesting. I get asked that a lot. I think we're a little too early in the events industry for it to have made tremendous impacts. Where I see it becoming amazing and useful is creating renders or mood boards or images of event briefs. That could conceivably actually save quite a lot of time and give a client a more reflective view and look of how their event might feel. That's where I see it becoming actually genuinely very helpful and time-saving. One of the nice things about our industry, I think COVID taught us as well, is that the demand for in-person human social connection feels a priority for most businesses, especially with the work from home kind of shift over the last few years particularly. You know, we do actually need to meet together to feel connected to something. That's like caveman stuff. Caveman stuff. So it doesn't, for me, doesn't feel like a tremendous threat to our industry, because I don't think we'll be replaced at all, ever, because I think for human flourishment, we need human connection. And to do that, we need to have in-person events. Sure, I mean, some of it might change to online, and but right now, I can't see AI being a tremendous negative effect on our industry.
Very good answer. I mean, it's like you said, the industry of events is getting people together, so it's very hard to use AI to do that because it involves human interaction. So in a way, the back end processes may be sped up by the introduction of AI, but in theory, the roles that take place right now will stay relatively similar for the next couple of years until things probably advance further. Looking at Clownfish Events going forward, where do you see Clownfish Events moving over the next couple of years?
Our golden eggs, in fact, my desk here, I have this little packet of Clownfish golden eggs, they're little mini chocolates. That is the work we want, the work we pitch for. And in round numbers, that will always be north of 6 figures. It will be large-scale corporate events and offsites. That's such a great market for us because so much of what we do in-house will always be delivered to those things. And we've had some tremendous opportunities to do some really big kind of high-profile 24-hour company away days. I love them. They're really fun. And I do think it makes a difference to culture if done right. I think eventually the master plan will be that we end up just with those. And that's an entirely different business to what we have today. But that's what we're all working on. It is clearly hard to find those kind of clients. Everyone wants them, and there's less of them around. This time last year, I had no real concept of what was about to happen. There were 2 opportunities that came up. We work in Chessington Trade Park, which is in kind of Greater London or Surrey. And directly opposite us, sadly, they were our friends as well, 2 print businesses went bust and went into liquidation. we have managed to buy one of the buildings, the best part of £1 million, and we've managed to lease and rent the other one. So our business has suddenly sort of almost tripled in space, and actually that gives us a tremendously exciting future. I think one of the big things that a business like us would always struggle with is space. And the truth is, for the best part of 14 years, we've never had enough space. It's never enough. And then very, very strangely, right now, we have way too much. So we're actually trying to think of ways, possibly businesses and possibly expansion plans, to actually fulfill the space that we now have. And that, for us, is kind of exciting business. That's sitting around thinking, all right, well, how can we utilize this? It feels a real privilege to have that available to us.
Excellent. So your business has survived 15 years. So many businesses don't make that marker. What one thing can you put that down to?
I think we've had a good purpose and a good vision. I think people want to follow that. One of my greatest joys, I think, is that half of the team have been here for 6, 7, 8 years plus, some 10 years plus. And a lot of them are younger than me, and I think that's particularly poignant because this kind of newer generation are generally not as loyal as perhaps they used to be, and kind of jump around the job market and try different things, gain new skills. That, for me, has been a great reason as to why I think we've done well. People are stuck around, and the clients get the same service and quality, and actually relationships built. This is ultimately a people business. Like, this is all done on relationships, I think. And so the relationships that the kind of 6, 7 core team have that have been here for 6, 7 years plus, I think are pretty special. And that does make a difference.
I think the ethos that you've implemented and the philosophies that you've kind of put to your team, and they live and die by what they say they're going to do. The end goal is maximized and communicated to everyone, and the way that you've energized the staff. You don't get 5-star reviews across the board without having a highly motivated team, and it's really exciting to see what obviously Clownfish Events have got coming forward with the additional warehouses and all the space you've got coming up as well. So, people that have listened to this podcast, Matt, how can they find more about yourself and the company?
Clownfishevents.com will take you straight to our site. We're on every social media platform with the handle Clownfish Events. And then I'm on LinkedIn, and I occasionally go through big bursts of posting on Instagram. My handle is originally, it's at Matt Clownfish, M-A-T-T, Clown. And drop me a message if you like or hate anything I've said, and we can debate it.
Thank you, Matt. It's been an amazing episode. Really, really interesting how Clownfish have grown from where they started to where they are now. And I think they've got an absolutely fantastic future and a really, really good team behind them. So that's another episode of We Built This Business, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Thank you.